Welcome to Raiders on the Record, the podcast featuring Hastings High School athletics. I'm Athletic Director Trent Hansen. My colleague Tim Hanneberg and I work together to bring you the stories of Raiders sports. We are thrilled to share conversations with the athletes, coaches, and alumni that represent Raider Nation. Check back weekly and be sure to share this podcast with your friends in the Raiders Network.
Amber Wirth Holmstadt is a 2002 Raider graduate. During high school, she was a four-sport athlete competing in soccer, cross country, basketball, and track and field. In soccer, Amber played during her 9th through 11th grade, earning 2 varsity letters before switching to cross country her senior year, earning a varsity letter there as well. In basketball, Amber was a 4-year varsity letter winner, 4-time all-conference recipient, and earned 2 all-state honors. In track and field, Amber was a multiple-time letter winner and all-conference recipient, while helping the team win the conference championship during her senior year. After college, she attended LIU Brooklyn, where she played basketball and was a 4-year starter. Amber brings a ton of knowledge and experience to the interview, along with tremendous advice for our athletes, parents, and coaches. All right, here we are with Amber Holmstadt, formerly known as Amber Wirth. Amber, we like starting off the beginning of everyone's life, so let's take it back to the beginning of your life. Let's hear about your mom and your dad, you growing up. Did you guys always live in Hastings? Did you eventually move to Hastings? And like I said, everything that kind of goes along with you growing up.
Beginning of time. Okay, so I was born and raised in Hastings. My dad is originally from North Dakota, so that's all he'll tout is North Dakota, how much he loves it, and it's the promised land. And my mom grew up in IGH, so they settled down in Hastings. And see here, first thing I remember, I have a younger brother and older brother. And I remember some of my first kind of memories of living in Hastings were, honestly, we used to have a wooden basketball court, like a basketball hoop in our backyard. That's what I grew up to, is shooting on an old wooden hoop. But I was the youngest kid in the neighborhood. So between my brother and I, there was my older brother was 4 years. My younger brother, I think, was 4 or 5 years. And so I was the youngest kid kind of on the cusp, and I had to keep up with everybody. So it was always being outside and playing different sports. And it wasn't just basketball, it was soccer and everything else in between, and making up different sports and tag games and just exploring and all that stuff. And so, yeah, just grew up in Hastings and lived there all the way until the end of high school.
Perfect. I know, once again, you brought it up, that is a long time ago, but if you could just go through a couple of the schools you attended here in Hastings,
Sure.
and if there's any teachers that really stuck out for maybe the schools. You don't have to go through every teacher you ever had, but any teachers at any of the schools that really stuck out to you and really had a positive impact on your life.
Let's see here. So I went to school at, elementary school was Kennedy Elementary, and I had a bunch of different teachers that were pretty influential. Like, I think there's Miss Petra, who's still there, 5th grade. Miss Sherry in 1st grade back in the day, but Greg Sandcamp.
Mhm.
So that was where I first ran into Mr. Sandcamp, or Coach Sandcamp. He was the FIA teacher. I'm not sure if he's still FIA teacher there, but he was definitely a big influence. Went to Hastings Middle School when it was the where it now is, I believe, Green Mill. So that's where the middle school used to be. I had a ton of different teachers there. Middle school was a little bit more of a blur compared to elementary and high school for me, but kind of fast forwarding a little bit to Hastings High School, I had a little bit of a weird kind of career in that I was in the now middle school for 3 years, and then they built the new high school my senior year. And so I was in old school, right? So I grew up watching the Diddies and the Hertels and all these different athletes at the high school, all these different sports. I mean, volleyball we used to go to, and basketball and all that stuff. But I'm an oldie, so I remember the old high school as kind of the main high school. And had a bunch of different teachers there, but I can't really think of any off the top of my head that were super influential. It was just kind of a combination of everybody. But I do remember being super into sports, but also into academics big time. And my parents kind of pushed both equally.
For sure. The next thing we always like to go into is the sports you played growing up. I typically like to stop people right around 7th grade. In my mind, that's when people get a little more serious with sports. And a lot of the people that we have on here get brought up to maybe a JV or varsity level, kind of in that late middle school era. So talk about the sports you played growing up.
Sure. So soccer was huge with me. can't remember the numerous amount of tournaments, and my parents always, especially my father, used to be the one that would drive everybody, right? So played soccer back in the day when it was both co-ed, male and female, and that was all the way up until I believe 5th or 6th grade. So it was 2 girls and 10 boys, and so it was always aggressive and always a challenge. And I remember being like, if I can keep up with the boys, I can definitely keep up with the girls. But didn't start basketball back in the day. Was me basically sitting in the backyard shooting by myself until and then going to all my older brothers' basketball games. So my dad was the coach at the time for them. So we traveled different games, and I remember vividly being at all these different tournaments and looking up at the board and saying, you know what, I'm in 4th grade and I see some other teams, and it was very minimal, but it was always 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that were playing little mini tournaments at a girls' 4th grade. But my dad would always say, you know what, we don't have at the moment, we just don't have the time and the finances to put towards that. And there's no other, Hastings type of 4th grade school. So I had to wait until 6th grade to actually try out for traveling for Hastings. But played soccer, basketball, gosh, what else? Track, always in track. I didn't, those kind of those main 3 sports until high school. When my senior year, I switched over when I had a scholarship, and we could talk about that later, but had a scholarship my senior year. So I decided that I didn't want to risk the chance of getting hurt in soccer. So I switched over to cross country running. But other than that, it's always been kind of those 3 main sports my whole life.
For sure. When we talk about the sports we played in high school, I typically like to start once again in 7th grade, and it kind of makes the most sense. We'll start in 7th grade fall, and then 7th grade winter, and then spring, and we could go through all the way from 7th grade all the way to senior year like that. We really like hearing about any accomplishments, personal accomplishments with you. So if you're a captain of a certain sport in a certain season, all conference, all state or state qualifier, things of that nature, any team sports that had any accomplishments as well. And then once again, anything else that kind of goes into those sports as well that you played here. So once again, let's start in 7th grade fall, and then we can run through all the way to senior year of high school. And then once again, any stories that go in there, anything you want to talk about, you can go for it as well.
Sure. Sounds good. So, let's see here. I didn't make any varsity or JV teams until my freshman year. So I don't know if we want to fast forward
Yeah,
there, but it was essentially the
definitely
same.
fast forward to that. That's okay
Kind of
then.
the same
Yeah.
3 sports, 7th, 8th, 9th, 7th and 8th grade, kind of the same 3 sports, just over and over. But started AAU in 8th grade and 9th grade though. So that's when I kind of ventured out and got more into outside of just Hastings, right? So outside of the realm of that. But let's see here. So 9th grade soccer, didn't letter until I was, I think, 10th grade, I believe. JV through 9th grade, but basketball right away in 9th grade. 4-year all conference, I think 2 or 3, maybe not 2-year all state. I can't remember. And let's see here. Track was huge. I remember my junior year, sophomore year especially. We were loaded. We had a bunch of different talent across all the different sports, whether it was or all the different field and track. And we won conference when we had no business winning conference. I think there was only 10 or 12 girls, and each one of us did 3 or 4 different events.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone just balled out big time and won conference when it was Woodbury had, 5 different athletes at every single different event, and, whether it's field or track. But that was a huge accomplishment. See here, we were ranked in state my senior year in basketball. We were ranked in Metro. Gosh, what else? We could talk a little bit later about kind of my experience the last couple of years of basketball, but yeah. And then back to cross country running, which was a lot of fun. That was a John D. Ball back in the day. And I had a couple of good friends from track that were long distance runners. And so they were like, hey, just come and play, what the heck? Mm-hmm. And so I actually didn't even make varsity. I was on JV, but I had an absolute blast. I had a blast not having pressure on me. Just, go out, have a good time, run, keep in shape, have a good time with your friends. And it was awesome. It was the only experience I had where I wasn't quote unquote depended on to score, or, in basketball, anything, right? So in soccer, scoring, all that stuff, it was just have a good time. So yeah, that's kind of my experiences is more so shading towards basketball for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to go into more detail about basketball, then let's do it. If you want to kind of talk about all the way from 9th to 12th grade, and once again, any kind of stories in between that as well.
Yeah. Man, let's see here. I would be remiss if I didn't kind of mention that my freshman year especially, man, we had a special group of people. Rita Gergen, Abby Keene, Jamie Kirshner, Gross, Katie Grossi, Weeder Holt. We had a bunch of different seniors, especially, and some juniors that literally said, you know what, you're good enough, kid. We're not going to give you crap. We're going to make you part of the team, right? And I remember Katie Gross especially would pick me up every single day. She lived just south of Hastings, and I lived just south of 316, and obviously couldn't drive, and so she'd pick me up every morning for morning workouts. Through the first 3 years, I had Coach Zach was the high school coach, and then obviously Coach Hansen was my senior year. But that first year especially was so special because it didn't matter if it was actual high school or if it was before the season. We used to go up to, gosh, I think it was St. Thomas had pickup ball or like a pickup league, and so they would always pick me up, and we'd always have a good time going up there, and in the car listening to Dre and Easy E and singing along, and we just all got along. And you know what, they didn't have to accept me as a freshman coming in and being a starter and being a quote unquote star or somebody that kind of stood out and all that stuff. They always pushed me to be harder, or pushed me they were hard on me, right? But at the same time, they always pushed me to be better, especially Rita Gergen. She was always on my side, never somebody that went back down from the competitors saying things about me, or anybody try to, sometimes people would say things as young and try to get in my head and all that stuff, and she'd be there to back me up and all that stuff. But it was really that core group that really pushed me along. I mean, I knew at that time that I loved basketball, and I really wanted to go play college basketball if I could. I had no idea at that time what division it was, but I knew I wanted to push myself, and it was really that core group that said, you know what, we're gonna make this your, we're gonna make, if this is your dream, we're gonna make it happen. So, and the record didn't show it so much. I think we had like a 500 record in the first couple of years, but honestly, those ladies they're my lifeline. They were there for me when I needed them the most. So
You talked about that 12th grade year being ranked in the state. What do you think one of the biggest tipping points was for maybe you personally, maybe leading the team to that kind of ranking, or for the team as well?
oh man, we had some studs in our team. Catherine Reuter was awesome. Let's see here, Leah Storley, Lindsay Mace, the Usos. We had a Caitlin Spelling Moore. We had a really stacked team. So it was again, I ventured out and played AEU, so I kind of came back with some different experience and some more experience and all this stuff, and really kind of said, you know what, you guys don't have to necessarily get on my shoulders, but let's ride together, right? But I'll never forget the tipping point of the whole season was that we were having a pretty good season, lost a couple of games, but we went up to Duluth and we played in a tournament against Duluth. And it was Duluth North, I think, or one of those teams. And then, gosh, it was two of those teams. But I'll never forget, there was one of the two games. I think I got maybe I was mouthy in high school, so got a technical in one of the games, and I think it was one of the parents or somebody in the team said something to me, and got into almost like a brawl for something. It was that Wiper Lake. It was one of those games where something happened, somebody was mad about it, somebody called out somebody. We had a team meeting, and after that, it was like it sparked something in everybody, and we all got along. And after that, we went on like a 10-game win streak. It was like one of those things where you almost had to, kind of like the current Vikings are doing, right? Where you have to just anger somebody, wake up the sleeping giant. And that was kind of the way it went. Is I believe it was Wiper Lake where we got into almost like a brawl on the floor, and me and another girl got kicked out from Wiper Lake, and there was a team meeting, and then after that it was just like everyone's ticked off, let's do something about it. So that was kind of the tipping point to kind of push us towards but we, in my whole career, we ran into teams like Lakeville South. We ran into teams that were always ranked 1 or 2 in the state, Woodbury and all that stuff. And that's not an excuse, but we always seem to run into like state champions in the regions. And Woodbury was always great in our division. And then Cretin Hall was in our division. And then my senior year, we moved conferences completely. So we got away from Sibley and Simley, and we obviously Park and Woodbury are always going to be part of the conference no matter what, it's just the way it is. But we picked up places like I currently live in Mounds View, so that was one of the schools, and Wiper Lake, and a couple of these big powerhouses. And so it's almost like the better competition we had, the better we played. And the funny thing is, our section, my senior year, we had 4 of the top 10 ranked teams in the whole state out of every division, because back in the day it was just 4 divisions. 4 of the top 10 teams were all in the same section. So it's literally, those teams could have finished 1, 2, 3, 4 in state, and they were all in the same division. So it was definitely dog eat dog. And I'll never forget last game we're playing Woodbury, and we had beaten Woodbury twice that year, which hasn't happened in a long time, and fouled out at the end of the game with about 30 seconds left, and it still haunts me to this day. It really does. I have dreams about it like once a month, where I just regret what happened, regret the outcome, and really wish we would have made it to state. So I think we'd have really done some damage, and maybe even finished, top 3. So, but that's the way life goes.
Nice. So
Yep.
you talk about track and field, especially your 10th grade year. Anything else maybe through 9 through 12 that you want to add in about track and field? Any events that you ran or
Sure.
once again, any team accomplishments or any individual accomplishments that you want to talk about when it comes to track and field?
Yeah, gosh, Tim, I can't remember back then with accomplishments, because accomplishments, honestly, were so team driven for me. Like they just
Mhm.
kind of come and go for me. But I have to think about what I remember on my Letterman jacket, right? I think I got all conference for something. I believe it might have been like 300. I definitely ran 300 hurdles. We were part of the hurdle crew back in the day with the Shoot sisters, who were exceptional. And both of them, I think, both the older sisters actually played at the U of M, or at least one of them went to the U of M and were a track stud. But 300 hurdles, it was high jump, which just, well, yeah, really wasn't great at, but enjoyed it. Triple jump, did a bunch of relays, especially the 4x4. Our 4x4 relay, I believe, for 2 or 3 years was ranked in state, like very, very good. We had some exceptional middle distance runners, so 800 runners, a couple of mile runners, like I mentioned, we were really good friends with a bunch of the distance runners, like Shoot sisters. Um, but yeah, we won. Like I said, we only had about 10, 12 athletes that did 3 or 4 events and placed almost in every single one of them my sophomore year, and beat out a really good Stillwater team and a really good Woodbury team to win conference. But we always had a couple people that were in state. I never made it to state for anything, but I have to say, if I had to pinpoint an event, I think the 300 hurdles would be my love, and it's still my favorite event to watch in the Olympics as well.
Mhm.
More 400-meter hurdles, excuse me. It's not 300, but for them 400.
Yeah. Looking back, then, what do you think one of your favorite moments was as a high school athlete? I think you mentioned a lot of it, especially when it comes to the team stuff. But once again, if you want to add anything in there too, so thinking back, once again, what's one of the favorite moments from being a high school athlete?
Um, I'm not gonna lie, beating Woodbury was
Hmm.
amazing. Beating them twice, actually. We have a framed picture that we were given our senior year that I still have, that we have in our main office here at home. And my husband's got a framed picture too, his senior year, which is kind of cute because we have them next to each other. So I literally look at it every single day. But gosh, what else? Like I said, we got all the way to the finals of sections that year, and then lost in the last couple seconds to Woodbury. So they got the revenge, of course. But just being ranked and just all the stuff in between. I remember a bus ride. Tartan was ranked number 1 in the state, and a couple. You're on the circuit so long, right? And you're playing AAU, you get to know a lot of your different competitors. And so, of course, I knew a couple of different girls from Tartan that I was friends with and played in AAU with and against and all that good stuff. And remember the bus ride on the way up there, and I remember everybody's calm and kind of, head down, thinking about the game, thinking about the scouting report and all that stuff. And I remember there being a sign that said, David did beat Goliath. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's the strangest, big, huge sign, right? And I said, ladies, look up at that. And we all looked at that. And we all kind of looked at each other. And I was like, that is the strangest sign ever.
Yeah.
But it was just such a pump up moment where it was just like, okay, we got this. And walked in the Tartan game, and I still get guff about it from Tartan every now and then.
Mhm.
I think I had 7 or 8 3-pointers and a half at that game. And one of my friends' dads was sitting next to my dad during the game, and he was, I guess, just beside himself. He just couldn't understand what the heck was going on. And so, yeah, like I said, individual accomplishments, don't mean too much. And we didn't have a ton of them. I mean, I really wish we had made it to state. That was really, supposed to be the icing on the cake. So I regret it. But yeah, just being ranked and being together, all the things that, the practices and just being in the trenches together was kind of the big thing. And you learn so much about yourself, and you learn how to expand yourself as an athlete. And yeah, all those nights of just being with the ladies is kind of some of the memories that I take away.
For sure. And I think that goes into my next one too. I always like to ask these back to back, and it's kind of tricky because they're really similar. But the next one is always the most rewarding part of being a high school athlete, which once again is very similar. Your favorite moment, or once again your favorite event, or anything like that you did as a high school athlete. So I think you answered that one already with the
Mhm.
friendships you made and competing with the girls on all the teams with you. But once again, if you could think of anything else, maybe, or just want to expand on anything as a rewarding part of being a high school athlete, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, I would like to touch upon it if it's okay. So I have 2 daughters. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we were told by the doctors they're supposed to be big girls because my husband is a big guy.
Hmm.
And so, we immediately had a conversation like, if we have kids, are we going to push them towards sports? Are we going to push them towards academics? Like, what's going to happen? And one of the things that I think is special about team sports is that you learn, again, not only things about yourself, but how you can work with others, how you can work with different personalities, how, if things don't go your way, how you can bounce back from things, and so on and so forth. But um, that's the biggest thing is you hear about it from pro athletes and you kind of roll your eyes like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's the practices, it's the
Mhm.
preparation. It's the destination, not the actual place that you're trying to get to. But it really is true, because I read an article about was it Brett Favre the other day that said, you know what, winning a championship is great, but I sat on the bus after and I was like, now what do I do?
Mhm.
Getting there was the actual part that was the best, and playing, not necessarily the actual ring at the end. It's great, but it's not, it's not everything. It's everything leading up to it. And so that's kind of what I feel about like athletics, not only in high school, but also in colleges. There's something about it that you learn qualities that you could take with you after, as a business person, as a coach, as a parent. Any kind of hat that you're wearing is, how can I pass it down to my kids? How can I pass it down to my students? Things like that, of that, the importance of being able to work with other people, being able to take people's negatives and make them positives, or work with people who you might not have the same kind of personality, and so on and so forth. And then always, always, always hard work, right? The importance of hard work. So yeah, I'd say that's I always was a team athlete. I never played golf and tennis, even though I really enjoy doing both now, but never did any individual events, and never really fully, embraced all conference and all state, because it's great. My name is called, that's cool, but that's just never really my personality, is to be like, woohoo, I did
Mhm.
this, more of we did this.
For sure.
Yeah.
You kind of named a few of our legendary coaches already with D Wall and Sandcamp and a few others as well. But who do you think these next couple ones? I always say that too, that they're pretty impossible to answer. But who do you think one of the best coaches is that you played for? And once again, we could define this in many different ways, but I'll let you kind of define it too. So who do you think that best coach is that you played for while you're in high school? And it could be you played in multiple sports, so you can name multiple people if you like.
Sure. So again, Coach Zach and Coach Hansen. I Coach Hansen will probably listen to this and kind of roll his eyes too. And that I when I first met up with him when he was about to take the position, I said, you know what, we're here. You have a core senior group that's going to take you all the way. You just let us fly, right? Give us
Mhm.
a couple of plays, coach us a little bit up, and we're going to be just fine. We've been together for a long time, and so hopefully that was part of the reason why he took the job in the first place,
Mhm.
before he moved over to the men's side later. But great coach, right? Great coach, very disciplined. Again, didn't necessarily have to coach much about basketball, more about life, more about hard work, more about preparation and things like that. And but the one coach that really sticks out, that was from my freshman year all the way my senior year, that was always with me during not only the season but off season, and always pushing me just a little bit beyond my comfort zone, was Pete McGinnis. So it was Coach Pete that was there, and he's one of the few people that, even if I got up early and went to the gym, he was already there.
Mhm.
And he was already, whether he was working with myself or with other people, he was kind of like one of those always people that, even if he wasn't coaching at the moment, he was always there. He was just always there to support you, always supporting somebody, right? And so you always saw him, and that was always just a big thing. And he was always just that one person I could always lean into that would say, okay, you scored 40. What does that mean? What about that one play? What about that turnover? What about that rebound? What about that, charge you could have had, or that loose ball? He was always somebody that said, you know what, can you do a little bit better? And the thing with high school athletes is, sometimes I look back and I feel like we were pushed, but we weren't pushed hard enough. And I think there's a reason for that, right?
Mhm.
You can only push student athletes so hard in high school, but in college, maybe we could talk about this later, but college, you're pushed to the brink. It's completely different. Like let's call it Raider makers, right? So back in the day, you run a Raider maker, you'd run it hard, but you'd always leave a little bit left in the tank, right? But in college, it's not that way at all. You literally
Mhm.
sprint and run all the time. You give it 100% every single second of every day. But in high school, it's more of like, okay, I'm gonna prep, I'm gonna kind of pace myself and do this and do that just so I can get over the hump. But you don't really unlock your potential until, in my opinion at least, until you get to college, if you get to that level. So
For sure. I like that you named Pete McGinnis because his name has popped up on here a lot. Interviewed him as well, but he just popped up the other day interviewing a really good swimmer, Elliot Wilcox from Hastings, and he talked about how he'd be swimming in the morning and Coach McGinnis would be swimming in the pool for some exercise. So
right,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
there.
So he just kind of always pops up, and Katie Hertel talked about how she would have to go to Saturday school with her mom because her mom was teaching Saturday school. So her mom would unlock the gym for her. And Pete was just there in the gym, and she called him the shot doc. So he would help her with his shot. And so it was just, like you're saying, he's just kind of always there. He's always popping up in people's stories. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Side note, Katie's mom is actually one of my favorite teachers. Now that I think of it, middle school teacher, geometry. And I remember I had, gosh dang it, what was the name of an after school event? It was like science something or another. It was some kind of special academic class or some academic sport or something like that. And I remember her being very influential. So yeah, shout out to Jan Hertel for sure.
Nice. Now, kind of same question, but the girls that you played with. So once again, we could define this best teammate in many different ways, and you played many different sports. So I'm sure there's a lot of names that come to your mind. If you've already named a lot of those girls too. So who do you think one of the best teammates is that you played throughout your high school career?
Man, I'll take that and turn it sideways and seeing a teammate that I never had, but an athlete that always pushed me was Lindsay Williams. Mm-hmm. Like I said, one of my good friends, graduated next to her, still good friends now, actually a bridesmaid in my wedding. But my goodness, I mean, there's a reason why she's Olympian, right? And so literally nobody worked harder than her. When everybody was sleeping, she was out skiing and all that stuff. She lived about southwest of Hastings. She lived off of 52 and I lived off of 316, but I would always go over to her place and she was out in the country and she'd be going up and down the highway or up and down the roads, right? I think they were now paved roads, but back in the day, it might've been dirt roads and all that stuff. And literally when nobody was watching, she was working her butt off. And so she always inspired me in that way, not necessarily as a teammate directly, but indirectly. But there's a bunch of, I think one person who never got as much credit, but was just extremely talented was Caitlin Spinelli Moore. She was, what was what's the female award that you get every
year?
Athena. The Athena, yeah. She was our Athena award winner. And, I think she was all conference in a couple of different sports, but, just a really good athlete overall. Great soccer player. I played with a bunch of good soccer players, actually. Kelly Peterson, I played soccer with her back in the day. Don Lodewagen was a great soccer player. There was a bunch of different athletes, but, the USOs were great. Let's see here. Who else? I had teammates from all over the place, right? I think I mentioned a couple of different people in track, like the Schutzes. But I got a nice mix of a bunch of different athletes. And I think that was one of the main things in Hastings, at least when I was growing up, is we had a bunch of specialty athletes, but there was nobody that was like, maybe Lindsay was as close as it gets with skiing, and maybe Kelly Peterson back in the day was with downhill skiing, but there was nobody that really specialized. It was just everybody was good friends because they all played the same 5 or 6 sports. And so there was, you didn't just play with somebody in one sport, you played with somebody in 3 sports. And I believe there's probably some other guys, my senior year is when they won state for football. And so those guys could probably the same thing, right? Where they said, okay, I played with the same three guys. I played basketball, I played baseball, I played football with them, or I played, wrestling, I did track, and I did this with them. So that's kind of the thing is with teammates is that you kind of take them from sport to sport. So
for sure. So you've kind of alluded to college as well. So walk us through what the recruiting process looked like, where you attended, major, and then we can go through your whole college career as well, and the sport you played, and anything else that goes along with that sport as well.
Yeah, so I haven't actually talked much about this. So this is kind of fun. Recruiting. So recruiting, I believe now is completely different from when I was in high school. I had a huge, it was like probably 2 or 3 boxes, and I'd have like file folders in each one of the different boxes of different states. And sometimes I'd have sub file folders of different universities. But back in the day, it was all letters. It was all letter based, phone call. And we didn't have text messages because we didn't have cell phones back in the day. So it was literally calling or letters. And so I'd have buckets and buckets of letters each day that would come in. A lot of them were Division III. I had a couple of JUCOs here and there. I was recruited by every school in Minnesota except for the University of Minnesota. And that's okay, because that was back in the day when it was Lindsay Wayne was a senior when I was a freshman. And they had a couple of girls that weren't my position, point guard, and a couple of different people that they recruited. So no big deal. That's totally fine. But recruited by most of the schools in Minnesota, a couple in Wisconsin. The Dakotas back in the day weren't Division I. So I just kind of said, all right, that's fine. But the big turning point with recruiting with me, quite a bit of it, I'd say maybe 50-50 was high school and 50-50 was AAU, kind of how I expanded my name and got it out there. But the big thing for me was my sophomore year, went to a camp out in North Dakota, got a little exposure to some Midwestern teams there, some teams like Western Illinois, Northern Iowa, some of the Dakota teams, again, some of the Division 2 and 3 schools. But I actually went to a camp out in the East Coast at, I think it was Holy Cross, I believe was the college, and had a great camp. Was able to show off my personality, shot the ball really well. And came home to a whole new world of recruiting, right? So the East Coast is a lot more expanded, a lot more Division 1, a lot smaller colleges, a lot more mid-majors compared to the Midwest, where it's just so expansive. And again, back in my day, there just was only one Division 1 in Minnesota, like they have St. Thomas now, and there was only Wisconsin back in the day, and now there's probably like, Wisconsin Milwaukee and Wisconsin.
Marquette is another one. Yeah, so it's
places,
growing huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So came back to the East Coast, and all of a sudden, a bunch of different schools wanted me to go take an official visit. A bunch of different schools were like, "Oh, a two guard that can shoot." That was my specialty back in the day. Anybody that knows me knows that if I had anything that had to define me, it was that I could shoot the ball and especially shoot threes. That was kind of my thing. And that's the way that we were taught back in the day is now you have to literally specialize in everything. You have to be good, an all-around player for the most part to play college basketball. But especially back in the day, nobody plays defense in high school. So that wasn't nearly as big of a deal, but shot the ball really well. And they're like, yep, we need a two guard that can shoot. So came back and got bunch of people are like, let's go to the East Coast. Let's, have official visits, so on and so forth. So fast forward to my senior year, and I'll never forget this. Excuse me. I took an official visit at Mankato, came back and said, okay, that's great, but I wanted to really major in mass comm media arts. It was kind of my thing. And I was like, all right, Western Illinois was talking to me. There was 2 or 3. I got a couple letters from Baylor, who was ranked like top 3 in the country at the time. A lot of people would sometimes send letters and say, hey, we're looking at you, but never really respond, which was fine. But I'd say about a half dozen colleges were like, yep, we want to take a look at you. So LIU Brooklyn is where I ended up going to. And LIU had said, okay, come out to the East Coast. Hey, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. Come out and enjoy 3 days in Brooklyn, New York, right? And I was like, oh, New York City, this is great. Let's check this out, right? So I took my, fast forward to about a week before. I'll never forget, I was sitting in science class, 8 o'clock in the morning, tired, how kids are in high school. And I'll never forget the announcer saying, or the intercom, the principal at the time said, you know what, just so you know, there's been an attack on Pentagon, attack on New York City, Twin Towers and all that stuff, and everybody was in shock, right? And I'll never forget a couple of the students around me kind of nudging me saying, you're supposed to be in New York next week, like what's going on? And I was like in complete shock. I was like, oh my God, immediately got on the phone with the head coach, immediately got on the phone with a couple of different assistant coaches, a couple of different players that I'd kind of been speaking with a little bit before I went out there, and said, is everything okay? And formed kind of a bond in that kind of way, which is kind of dreary and kind of morbid, but it was like, luckily nobody on the team and the university was really affected because it was so early in the morning when all that stuff went down in 9/11, but it was literally right across the water because LIU Brooklyn's campus is right by the Dumbo area, for anybody that knows New York City, down under Brooklyn Bridge is what they call it. And it's just right across from where the Twin Towers were, right? So literally you could sit on the top of one of the roofs at LIU and you could see all the smoke coming up, and you could see, if you sat there long enough, you could see the other plane actually hit the other Twin Towers. So long story short it was like we formed this kind of weird but kind of family bond right from the beginning. And so when I went out there, loved it. Really weird because they took us down to ground zero when there was still smoke rising, and they could only be allowed within a couple of blocks of the actual area and all that stuff. And it was like I felt like this little fish in a big pond, and I like that feeling. In Hastings, I was kind of a big fish in a small pond as far as basketball went for so long, but I was like, this is awesome. I get to experience New York City for 4 years on a scholarship, and academics were big to me, and I was like, oh, I can get a really cool internship my senior year. This would be awesome. And so I went there, came back, and said, you know what, that's it, it's LIU. And that was it. So I met NLI. Within a couple of days after that, was kind of weird because Western Illinois actually offered me a scholarship days after and said, no, you need to back out, your other one because we need a 2-guard. And I said, well, that's fine. I can take an official visit. They said, no, we need you to sign now. And I said, what happened? They said, our 2-guard went down. And so I was kind of like, the ego in me was like, no, I don't care about you because you only care about me because somebody got hurt. But that's kind of weird thinking back that that was one thing. One place I actually looked at as well was Army. Had I not gotten a scholarship, my backup plan was to go to Army, walk on, and then hopefully get a scholarship. Because I'm always been that kind of person that was, big into representing our country, and Army was always someplace that I always looked up to. Anybody that has been in the Army, anybody that served our country, and so I was like, this is cool. I can, be in the Army and potentially play basketball. So that was my backup plan, but luckily my first plan worked. But the weird thing about LIU was about 3/4 of the way through the year, the head coach, part of the reason why I went there is because they just won the championship. And I was like, oh, this is great. They have half their starting, they told me, you're not going to start. You're going to come in, you're going to earn your minutes. One of the best shooters in the nation is going to be playing in front of you, which was, her name was Kim McMillan, but she still got, I think, a couple of records at St. John's. And I broke her, eventually her record at LIU, but she was one of the best shooters in the country at the time. I'm like, that's great. I'm going to learn from them. Cool. But the coach actually quit. And so it was the weirdest thing sitting and being like, I am some kid who's barely been in New York once, and I'm going to go out to New York City not knowing what kind of coach I'm going to have, what kind of coaching staff I'm going to have. But luckily, when I got out there, coach was Steph Gately. She coached there LAU for like 6-7 years. She coached at Monmouth for a couple of years, and then she was at Fordham just recently. One of the best coaches in the nation. She's top 10 in wins and all that stuff. I played for her and her coaching staff, and I still talk to her almost daily. Like, she's like a second mother figure to me, right? She's just been such a huge influence in my life. And it was just weird how it all worked out. Like, I actually didn't even sign. I actually told her just the other day, I said, God works in mysterious ways, in that you didn't pick me and I didn't pick you, but yet we get along so well, especially as adults, because our mindsets are the same, right? And she's a defensive coach, especially. And so, I was a shooter. And so she looked at me and was like, you're not going to play unless you're going to play defense. So I had to learn very quickly how to do that. But yeah, getting into LIU is just kind of strange, right? Because the coaching staff was like, peace out. I'm going out to, gosh, I can't remember where he ended up at, but left. And so I was like, I looked at my mom and I'm like, what do I do? I can't back out, can I? And back in the day, I don't know if you know much about the transfer portal, Tim, or what's going on with the transfer portal, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. But back in the day, you just couldn't transfer, right?
Yeah.
You had to either sit out a year or wait it out and all that stuff. And I was scared, but you know what? I was like, I'm going to stick through this, and I have no regrets. Zero.
Yeah, nowadays it's so easy to just go wherever you want, and especially within conference, so Big Ten to Big Ten is super easy. And back in the day, you're losing years left and right, so people just stuck it out. So pretty wild that's changed so much. So
yeah, I was gonna say during the women's Final Four was here when Paige Beckers and UConn was playing South Carolina for the national championship, and so for any Final Four, men's or women's, all of college basketball, all the coaches, the coaching staffs come in and they do various conferences and discussions and meetings and things like that. And so obviously my coach was in there, and one of the assistant coaches who's now assistant head coach at Fordham University, I took him out for dinner one night. And so we sat there, and, I got on the topic of portal, and both their eyes got really big, and they're like, let me tell you about the portal, Amber. And they laid it all out. And I'll tell you what, I cannot believe in this day, Tim. Sorry to go on a big tangent with this, but anybody that follows men's or women's basketball, or I don't know if there's any sports that do this. I think there was kind of various football and all that stuff that do it, but the portal is still open right now. And essentially what it is it's always been open, but the rules are, if you play Division I or Division II, you can go down a division and not be punished by sitting out a year. But if you go up a division or stay in the same division and change colleges, you have to sit out a year. But because of COVID and because of people losing a full year, which I can't even wrap my head around, working out for a full year and then not getting to play. I mean, that's just, I feel bad for any of those athletes that had to go through that through high school and college. I respect anybody that had to go through that. I don't have the patience for it. So God bless them for making it through that. But I think this is year 3 of the portal being open. And my coach said that I think Lindsay Wayne at the University of Minnesota, her whole team, every single player on her team is in the portal. So at one time she had no players on her team. And I think the men's side at one time had none on their team as well. And that was pretty normal across all of women's and men's basketball. And I can't believe that you can literally say, I don't feel like being anymore. I'm going to be in the portal. And so my coach is telling me these horror stories of kids who either, they gave up so quickly. And I don't like the portal because it's just kind of it's not a great place to be as far as, uh, life skills, right? As
Mm-hmm.
far as like saying, you know what, if you don't like it, stick through it. There's many a time that I call my parents, crying after a loss, some bad losses, or crying after practice and being screamed at all the time. I had an assistant coach that rode me for 4 straight years, and I still call her now and tell her thank you, because that's what I needed to be better. Like, you didn't have to be so ridiculous about it sometimes, but I appreciate coaches and people that keep it real and that can push you and challenge you and compete. But anyways, back to the portal. Kids give up so easily and they say, I don't like it, or I'm not getting playing time, or I'm sad and I want to go home. You have kids now that can go to 4 different colleges in 4 years. Now imagine playing for Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa in 4 years. That's what we're going to get from some of these athletes. And I feel like it doesn't teach kids that perseverance, right? Or teaching kids that when things are negative. Now, there's a big difference between some colleges that go through harassment and things like that. I understand that's terrible. That's a whole different subject. But when you're just getting challenged and having a tough time, you can't just give up. And I feel like the portal is kind of opening that door for people, and that drives me nuts. I don't like that. I hope that they can actually close this portal sometime soon. So, yeah.
So you go to LIU Brooklyn. You graduate from there. You play 4 years of basketball, or 5 years too. What, I guess, walk us through from kind of when you went on campus, once again, major, and then all the way to where we are today. So catch us all the way up to today.
Sure. So let's see here. 4 years there, as far as basketball goes, kind of had the same success in high school that I did in college. I believe I was one of maybe the first Division I players from Hastings. I think there's a couple of girls after. There's one I think that plays at Crichton. Crichton. I think you would know better.
Yep.
Yeah, great athletes, right? Had some records in Hastings. That's great. Records are meant to be broken, of course. But so I was really excited. Cool, Division I, get to play and all that stuff. Didn't know what my career is going to be like, but as soon as I got on campus, I mentioned before that they said to me, you're not going to be a starter. You're going to have to earn your time. Blah blah blah. As soon as I got there, the girl had actually transferred. That was supposed to be a shooting guard. So right away, right off the mix, like very first game, I didn't start till like my 3rd or 4th game, but after that, I started every game the rest of my career. And I was fortunate enough to do that. And I was always challenged. They always brought in more people and all that stuff. And I was lucky enough to be a captain my senior year. I left LIU top, I think 7 or 8 in scoring. I have a couple of records still. So I still hold a couple of 3-point records. I hold a conference record for 3-point shooting. At one point I was, top 15 or 20 in the nation in career 3-pointers. So I was a good 3-point shooter. Like, that was kind of my thing back in the day. But we didn't make the tournament, which was super sad. Again, we played kind of like in high school. We played 1 or 2 teams that were really, really good, and always mid-major. So they were always, our conference was the Northeast Conference. So they were like usually a 14, 15, 16 seed, so kind of one of those smaller mid-majors. But we had a couple of teams that were just so dominant for so many years. And so my senior year, we got, I think, semifinals, and my junior, I believe we got to the finals. I can't remember exactly, but that haunts me as well. I was just so close, but yet so far away. But getting to the tournament, and anybody that gets to play in the NCAA tournament for men's or women's basketball, I'm really jealous of. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's the Mecca. So it's the place you want to be. But so that was kind of so I was named all conference. I think my senior year, my junior year, I was all honorable mention, things like that. So I had some pretty good, singular success. But the one thing that I was most I was happy about was in high school I was it salutatorian, and then in college I was a I can't remember what you call it, but basically graduated with honors. I was an academic All-American, so. I still get crap from some people that say, oh yeah, you were an All-American, but it was academic. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I'm very proud of that. Right. So graduated with like a 3.9, all that stuff. And did get my internship with Spike TV and MTV back in the day. So that was fun, all that stuff, and kind of accomplished a lot of the different things that I wanted to accomplish both on and off the court. So, but after, I do have one regret, and it was as soon as I was done, we got back my senior year, we went out to Europe. And a lot of the younger kids, or the underclassmen, played in a couple of different tournaments. We played in a couple of different countries and all that stuff. And I actually played for a university that recruited heavily international players. So I had teammates from Slovenia, Slovakia, Ukraine, bunch of Sweden, Germany, a bunch of different teams out. So, going to Europe for them was just like going home. So it was absolutely fantastic from a culture perspective, learning from some different teammates about different lifestyles and things like that. But went out there and came back, and I had a job lined up for myself, an internship and a job. And so I was so infatuated with that I talked to a talent agent for a while, I did a couple of different workout sessions with them, and they said, okay, we want to send you overseas. But here's the kicker is I was a two guard that would shoot, 12 to 15 shots a game and score 20 points or whatever. And that was my thing, right? Less amount of shots, make more, get the ball rolling, get everybody involved. That was my mindset. I didn't have that killer instinct, that black mamba kind of instinct like I do now as a professional. But had I had that, I would have gone overseas, and I regret not trying. I regret kind of being a little bit scared and being like, especially in women's basketball, they send you overseas and there's a couple of different divisions, and everybody hears about the WNBA players that go to Brittany Griner that goes to Russia, and Waylon goes to I can't remember, Ukraine or something like that, and they make money over there, but they play at the highest level. Well, at these second and third levels, you get a lot of talents like myself back in the day who were great scorers and all that stuff, but they wanted to. Unless you were like a true 3 or 4 or 5, I was more of a shooting 2 guard. They wanted to turn me into a point guard, and they wanted me to shoot the ball every single time coming on the court. It was literally pick and roll and shoot the ball, or figure out, do something, make a move, and then maybe get my teammates involved. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. I regret not trying to go overseas and try and say, I played professional basketball. My brother-in-law played professional basketball and over in Sweden, and I really regret it. And so part of my thing now is that my girls, I have no regrets, right? That's my big thing, is trying to push them. And my parents were scared as well. My parents were always supportive, but they were like, you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, for the first time in my life, I'm just not really sure if I want to do this. So yeah, if anybody that's listening that has any aspirations for professional anything, go and do it. Go and try. Fail if you have to. But I don't know what scared me, but it was more of like, I was just afraid of being in a country where they can actually fire you game to game. And I was afraid I was going to get over there. They were going to fire me within 5 minutes if I didn't take 20 shots. So
then, once again, walk us to where we are today. You got a family, husband, kids, and then your current occupation as well.
Sure. So, been married for 10 years. My husband, kind of last name, if anybody knows men's basketball back in the day, my husband, big name in Monticello. His brother was Mr. Basketball back in the day. And my husband played at, husband's brother, who was Mr. Basketball, played at Montana State. My husband played at South Dakota. Met through a house party way back in the day. So it was ironic that we just so happened to both be basketball players. But we have 2 daughters, one's 7, Natalie, who's just absolutely amazing, right? Like, she's tall and thin and really smart as a whip and all that stuff. And then my youngest, who is just really aggressive and competitive, and she's 4 years old. And so we're hopeful that, maybe they get into sports, and we're starting to introduce them one by one. So, but I work as a revenue operations manager for a small company called Center, which is kind of like a offshoot of Concur. They do expense, basically a corporate credit card and expensing mechanism. So, if anybody's listening that needs any corporate credit cards, it's www.getcenter.com. Sorry, I had to plug it.
That's right.
I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and then I have kind of a background in marketing and analytics. Is kind of what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Awesome. The last couple questions then for you, Amber. We always end with advice for our parents, coaches, and student athletes. So, thinking back on all your high school experiences, your college experiences, if you had to talk to parents and coaches now and give them a couple pieces of advice, what do you think it would be?
First of all, listen to your parents. I absolutely love my parents. I haven't talked about it enough in this interview. It doesn't matter if they're traditional parents or if you're grandparents or an aunt and uncle or, 2 moms, 2 dads, whatever it is. If they are willing to put money and time towards what you're doing, you should have enough respect to try your best at what it is. We're always telling our girls that you don't have to necessarily love something, but try it and let us know if you don't like it. But the only way you can play high school or college sports is if you really have a passion for something, because you put too much energy and too much time into it to not love it, right? So that's the first thing, is follow those that are willing to put time and effort into you, whether it's a parent or maybe a friend or a family member, extended family member, whatever. The next thing would be my kind of personal philosophy in life, whether it's whatever hat I'm wearing, whether it's my mother hat or my wife hat or my athlete or, Vikings fan, whatever hat I'm wearing at the time, is every day just get a little bit better. Like, that's the one thing I want to, I don't get to talk to people enough about that, but it's improving one way or another. It's reading an article. It's challenging yourself at work. It's challenging yourself academically. It's reading an extra article from something you don't like. It's maybe spending a little bit of putting a little bit of extra money away. It's spending a little bit more time with your kids. Anything that makes yourself better, no matter what kind of hat you wear. And we all wear a ton of different hats, right? Like you wear, get a little bit better as a wrestling coach. I would say to you, Tim, learn something new, do something that scares you, do something that challenges you, but always get just incrementally better. And as a female in particular, we tend to compare ourselves to each other, right? And so we're always, whether it's an athlete or beauty or anything, success in academics, success in corporate, whatever we're in, we're always comparing ourselves. And so a lot of times it's difficult to say, you know what, I am not going to compare myself to another woman. I'm going to compare myself to myself. And that's really tough to say, but that would be another thing is try not to, especially as females, compare yourselves with other people, and try to get better, you versus you, every day. And it doesn't have to be something gigantic. It could be something minimal every day. Go on a little bit longer run than you normally would. Challenge yourself to do something, cook that whatever meal you have a little bit better, a little bit differently. It could be absolutely anything. Like right now, people would laugh if I told them that I love gardening. And so going outside, like, what can I do a little bit different to the soil, or do this or that, or how can I grow these flowers a little bit differently or better or more, all that stuff. So, and I guess the last thing is, find a passion in life. I'm a very passionate person and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and my husband doesn't. And that's great. That's, like I mentioned, he's the yin to my yang. And, but follow your passion. If you really like something, don't let other people ever put you down for it. I don't care if it's cars, if it's whatever, sports, if it's books, if you're a Potter fan, Harry Potter, a pothead or whatever, like, you love it, you go out and you do it, and don't ever be ashamed of what you love to do, because not enough people in life have really passionate things, right? And so just follow it and don't worry about what anybody has to say about it. I think would be the big thing. But yeah, getting better, incrementally better, I think is the one thing, is wake up in the morning and saying, there's two different things you can say in the morning, right? You can either say, good God, it's morning, or you can say, good morning, God. And that's the kind of attitude that I try to push on my girls as well, is having a positive attitude through really cruddy situations, no matter what you're going through in your life, is also another kind of thing that I push personally. So just trying to, even though, you might want to put a happy face on, you gotta sometimes just fake it to make it, right? Sometimes you just gotta have a positive attitude, and your body and your emotions and all stuff will follow through with it. So
For sure. I think that would be really good for our student athletes as well. And that's who we kind of end with on the second part of that question. So anything else you would like to talk to student athletes about? And like I said, any kind of advice for them from your experiences?
Oh man, there's so much. I think one of the biggest things, and this is going to sound really cliche, is don't worry about failing. The girls right now are always coming up to me after their sports or after little academics and saying, did I do good? Did I win? Am I the best? And a lot of times I just have to sit down and say, who cares? Who cares if you won? Who cares if this or that? Did you have fun? Did you get better? Did you improve? Did you act like a teammate? Did you listen? Things like that. And so that's one thing I would say is sometimes it's not necessarily, and I know, again, people are going to roll their eyes, but it's not necessarily if you win or lose, because I'm a great example of somebody I was a part of some really good teams, but we never really got over that hump, right? Again, I graduated my senior year. The men's football team was fantastic. They won state. There's a bunch of different people who have really had success, championships, Diddy and Hertel, and those different groups. Everybody's, a couple of different people can say, you know what, yes, I've been an individual, state champion or college champion or things like that. And then there are people like myself who are a part of some great teams that just couldn't get over the hump and haven't really tasted a whole lot of championships before. But that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy the journey, that I didn't learn a lot, that I didn't really, we had success in winning along the way. But it's not necessarily always about winning a championship. It's about the want of winning a championship. It's about striving for that, because that's the kind of personality traits that you're going to take with you after school and all this stuff, is really learning from what your mistakes are. I know it sounds as cheesy as hell, right? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. But it really is. Everything that you do in academics and in sports right now in high school will translate into life. It really will. If you're going to give up, then that's the way you're going to translate into life, with different jobs, because there's going to be difficult jobs, and you're going to have to start off in the bottom and work your way up. There's not as much nepotism and all that stuff, and like maybe there used to be, but there's a lot of different verticals in different corporate jobs and all that stuff now that you do move around. So I understand. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're going to have one job for the rest of your life, but just jumping around from job to job and quitting is not the way to go about it though, right? Like put some time and effort into that. And so, but yeah, I'd say find something you really like to do in high school, especially whether it's sports, academics. I'm huge into people that do, like music and dance and art, artsy stuff, and huge into art and all that stuff. I don't think it has to be just sports stuff. I think people forget that. It's just, I was a big academic nerd, right? I hung out with a bunch of different circles. So it wasn't just the jocks. I was big into academics and all stuff too. And I think that if you can well round yourself with more things than just one thing, not just academic or sports or whatever, find a passion and do a bunch of different things and fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Fail, fall on your face, lose, learn from it. Just don't pout about it and then walk away and not do anything about it. Learn from it and then move on, because we're all going to fail. And I can't tell you that everybody's won everything in their life. No one's done that, right? Jordan hasn't done that. LeBron hasn't done that. Gretzky and all those guys haven't done that. Babe Ruth, the best ever, the GOAT, Brady's struggling right now. So the point being that, like, you got to learn from it and you got to keep moving on. It's not going to define you. What's going to define you is your attitude after.
For sure. So Amber, that's all the questions I got for you. The last thing we always do is just turn the microphone over to our guest, and anything else you want to get off your chest, any questions I forgot to ask you, anything else you want to talk about, like I said, the time is yours and you can go for it.
Sure. So first of all, Tim, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate having kind of a place to talk to about not just Raider athletics, but some post-Raider, because a lot of people that know me know that I don't talk too much about high school, and I talk even less about college, but I really, really enjoyed my time in high school being a Raider. And no offense to the Raiders, but I'm going to really enjoy my time coaching my girls as a Mustang in Mountain View. And we'll see everybody in every athletic sport in Hastings, especially after my girls start getting into more, hopefully, high school sports and academics and things like that. But I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about that and really thank people for all the time that I got to spend with them, and I maybe have missed some people that I forgot to name, and I apologize for that if I did miss anybody. But really, really, really enjoyed my time in high school and college, and hope that anybody that's listening that is still in high school or college enjoys their time too, because it really is the best. Especially college was the best 4 years of my life, for better, for worse, winning, losing, learning, the ups and downs and everything. It just made me the person that I am today. So
awesome. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate your time.